Hi everyone, Michael P. Spradlin back today with another chapter of Into the Killing Seas. I am, along with children's authors all over the world, reading a book online, and today I'm going to read another chapter, chapter 4 from the book. And if you're a teacher, parent, librarian, and you want to use this for any class or programming of any type for patrons or students, or you just want to listen to a good story, you can use this on any platform however you'd like. I'd like to give a shout out to Mrs. Robinson's fifth graders in Cameron, Missouri, who I think are going to be participating in this read along. So I hope you guys enjoy the book. So let's jump right in. Chapter 4, Into the Killing Seas, Desperation. All I could think about were Teddy's cries as he tumbled through the air, and then I realized he was going to yank me in with him. "The lifeline, Patrick! The lifeline!" I heard Benny shouting at me, his voice sounding so far away. "Grab hold, little man! Benny's coming!" The lifeline was a thick rope fence that circled the ship. It ran through a series of stanchions welded to the deck. Its name said it all. It was the last barrier to keep sailors from plunging over the side of the ship in rough seas. I still gripped Teddy tightly by the ankle, but he was dragging me along with him. Teddy was only 2 years younger than me, but nearly the same size and weight. I was pretty sure I couldn't hold him. But once again, I listened to Benny. "Ah!" Teddy cried as I reached out and snatched hold of the lifeline. I hoped it was still intact. The fire could have burned through it, or it could have come apart in the explosion. But lucky for us, it held fast. I gripped the rope with all my strength as I flipped over the side of the ship. I thought my shoulder would be ripped from the socket when Teddy and I finally jerked to a stop. We dangled in the air, Teddy swinging back and forth in my hand. "Ah, Benny, help me, please, someone help," I shouted. I had Teddy tightly around the ankle, but knew I couldn't hold him for long, and I wouldn't have anywhere near the strength to pull him back up. As it was all I could do to grasp the lifeline. We were going to fall into the roiling ocean. Though I could hear the shouting and running of other crewmen above me, no one came to our aid. No one except Benny. "Hang on, Pipsqueak, I'm almost there," Benny yelled over the chaos. And then he was. His scarred and burned face appeared staring down at me over the edge. "Hold on," he shouted. "Hurry, Benny. I can't hold him much longer." "Ah!" Teddy was wailing at the top of his very loud and substantial lungs. "Almost there, kiddo," Benny croaked. Teddy was slowly slipping from my grip. Benny looked like he could barely move, but somehow he knew we needed his strength. "Benny, hurry," I pleaded with him. He couldn't use his hands, so he humped forward on his knees and elbows and leaned over the side. "All right, kiddo, you need to listen to me. I'd grab you if I could, but this body of mine ain't working like I want it to. So you're going to swing your leg up and hook it over the lifeline. You're going to pull the both of you up. Understand?" I thought Benny was crazy. I didn't have the ability to hold us, let alone save us. I was terrified. "Benny, no, I can't. Listen to me, Patty boy," he shouted, interrupting me. "This is the only way. Now swing your leg up and hook this rope with it. That's an order, Marine." I could barely breathe with the strain, but what choice did I have? It took a couple of tries, but somehow I willed my body to cooperate. "That's it, Patrick," Benny said. "Now come on. Now comes the hard part. On the count of 3, you got to let go of that rope and grab your brother with both hands. You're safe. You're holding him with your leg. Now take both hands and pull him up to the deck. Do you hear me?" I couldn't focus. All around me, men cried out in agony, begging for help, for relief from the pain they were feeling. My shoulder was on fire from the strain of Teddy's weight. He was wiggling and thrashing, and it was all I could do to keep from dropping him. The strange thing was, the ship was still churning through the water. Either the engines hadn't been turned off, or whether there was no one left alive in the engine room to shut them down. Just moments ago, I had seen the huge gaping maw in the middle of the ship. The great vessel was sucking in water. The seawater was taking it down fast. This was the most horrible nightmare I could imagine. Why didn't someone turn off the engines until they figured out what to do? "Teddy! Teddy!" I shouted, coming back to the moment. "Hold still!" I groaned as my shoulder stretched and my hand cramped. I couldn't drop him. I would never forgive myself. But Benny was ordering me to do something I was petrified to even attempt. I closed my eyes and saw my mother's face. I could see her standing there at the airfield, tears forming in her eyes as the plane's engines hummed in the background. It was so loud she had to shout to be heard, but she told me, "Take care of your brother." I knew she was depending on me. I glanced up at Benny's burned and disfigured face. Even though through the scarred skin, I could see the determination in his eyes. Okay, Benny, I said. I'll do it. Benny counted. 1, 2, 3. I let go of the lifeline and grabbed Teddy's legs with my free hand. Teddy swung in my hands and banged hard against the hull of the ship. Ah! He cried. It's okay, Teddy, Benny yelled to him. We got you. You're safe now. I heard Benny groan. He had to have been suffering horribly. He was yelling words that if Sister Mary Teresa had heard him say them, he'd be in trouble for years. He wasn't going to be able to help us. I looked down and saw the ocean waves crashing against the side of the ship. If I didn't do something soon, Teddy and I were dead. Benny, I begged through gritted teeth. I can't hold him much longer. We've got to get him help, Benny said from above. The best way you can take care of Teddy is to get him moving. Teddy, I cried, listen to me. You got to climb up me. Like always, Teddy didn't answer. He just kept on wailing. I know you're scared, I pleaded. I am too. But you have to do this. I'm going to swing you and you have to reach up, grab me and climb back up onto the deck. For Mom and Dad. You have to. He didn't want to do it. I know he didn't. But when I started swinging us back and forth, he let out a big scream and lurched upward, grabbing onto my waist. We wiggled in the air like two earthworms on a fishhook. You can do it, buddy, I whispered. I was trying to be like Benny. Positive, encouraging. I know you can. You have to. And slowly, Teddy pulled himself up, inch by inch. He rose back toward the deck and scrabbled over the side. Now it was my turn. I was tired. So tired. But Teddy had done something I never thought he'd be able to do because we had no other choice. Maybe I could too. Almost there, buddy, Benny shouted. You gotta do it. You done good now, and now you gotta finish the job. Pull. Come on now, pull. I pulled and strained every muscle in my body, and with one final effort, I swung my torso up, got a hand on the lifeline, and yanked myself up into the dark, onto the deck. Teddy quickly crawled away from the edge and huddled against my side, sobbing. The three of us sprawled exhausted on our backs. We paused only long enough to take hold of the lifeline. I pried Teddy's arm from around my chest and placed his hand on the rope, closing mine over his. It's okay now, Teddy, I said, softly. You're okay now. The ship still listed at a very sharp angle, and if it tilted any further, we could easily plunge into the sea all over again. As we lay there, the heat from the deck penetrated through my shirt, reminding me that the ship was going up in flames. Come on, boys, Benny said. We can't stay here. I ain't heard no order yet. But I bet you a piece of Lindy's cheesecake, the best slice in New York City, we got to abandon ship. This tub is going to sink. Just then, as if to reinforce Benny's point, the ship cracked with a loud snapping noise, and the gap amidships opened wider. All around us, men were losing their footing, somersaulting down the deck and plunging into the sea. Okay, Patty boy, Benny croaked, his voice sounding weaker and worse by the minute. We can't crawl all the way to the stern. We'll never make it. Everyone hold on to that lifeline and don't let go of it for nothing. Somehow he staggered to his feet. We all grabbed onto the rope and lurched single file along the edge of the deck, dodging sailors, flames, and burning debris as we made our way to the stern. When we arrived there, we found hundreds of men gathered at the ship's railing. Some of them wore life jackets and some didn't, but everyone wanted one. It was mass confusion. 2 sailors had a net full of life jackets they poured onto the deck. There was a mad dash to get them. We were too far away through the crush of bodies to reach any, especially since the men weren't being too polite about it. Fists were flying right and left, and once they'd gotten their hands on a vest, some of the men were jumping straight into the water. A couple of young officers stood at the stern with their hands up, shouting and pleading with the men to stay on board, that help had to be on the way. There has been no order to abandon ship, one of them shouted. Wait until we receive instructions. But no one was really paying attention. Some of the men were even jumping into the water without life jackets. This was what desperation looked like. I was terrified at the thought of abandoning ship. I wasn't a good swimmer, and I didn't want to jump into the ocean. Benny, I yelled over the noise, can't we just stay on board? Somebody's got to be here to rescue us, right? Soon, like the officer said, can't we wait? Benny shook his head. I don't think so, sport. I'm sure the ships and planes are on the way right now, but I don't think the India is going to last until they get here. We got to find us some life jackets and a raft. Hey, you, sailor, Benny hollered to a man standing in front of him. Where can we get some life jackets? The man didn't respond. I reached out and tapped him on the shoulder. He turned and looked at us and saw 3 miserable saps. I was exhausted and Teddy still whimpered. In that moment, we probably looked a whole lot younger than we were, and Benny's face was horribly burned and disfigured. The sailor's eyes widened in surprise. He sucked in a hissing breath and backed away from us into the crowd. Cripes, Benny said, watching the man push himself through the crowd as if he'd just seen a ghost. Tell me true, Patty boy. Do I look that bad? Even then, I couldn't lie to Benny. You look pretty bad. It's just burns, though. I'm sure you're going to be fine once we get you to a doctor. Maybe that was a little bit of an exaggeration. Benny looked horrible, and I was worried about him because he seemed to be weakening. I'd spent the last few years of my life watching people die in all kinds of ways. I'd seen wounded Chamorro gorillas in the jungle that would come back hurt from a fight and slowly waste away from their injuries. American soldiers shot down by the Japanese. All around me had been war, death, and chaos, and I knew what it was like to watch someone die. Once the Americans retook Guam and we'd gone to live in the orphanage, we'd gotten away from it for a while, but I hadn't forgotten. And on top of everything happening all around me, right at that moment, I worried that Benny might be slipping away. You think Rita Hayworth will still marry me when I get back home and propose, Benny asked. That was Benny. Even in the middle of a horrible disaster, he was going to keep things light. She's crazy if she doesn't, I answered. You're a horrible liar, Patrick O'Donnell. Don't ever get good at it, kid. Come on, we got to try and find out what's going on. Benny hollered and shouted at the crew as we worked our way through them. A couple of sailors asked Teddy and me if we needed help. We need help getting off this ship is what we need. Where's them life jackets and rafts? But no one ever answered. They didn't seem to know what to do. I overheard one sailor tell another that the first torpedo destroyed the ship's electrical system. His shipmate answered that without it, there was no way for instructions to get out to the crew over the ship's loudspeakers. Benny herded us through the crowd. We kept asking questions and demanding answers, but each response conflicted with the last. The distress call had gone through. It hadn't gone through. The captain had given the order to abandon ship. The captain had given no such order. He was dead. He was alive and on the bridge taking control of the situation right now. No one seemed to know the truth. The group at the stern was growing in size. Despite orders to the contrary from the few officers there, men continued to ignore them, taking their destiny into their own hands and leaping off the ship. But they didn't realize that even though one of the massive engines had finally died, the other was still running. While one of the Indianapolis's giant propellers still turning, some of those who jumped were bludgeoned to death or chopped to pieces. It was worse than anything I'd seen on Guam. And like I said, I'd seen plenty. Don't look, boys. Don't look. Come with me, Benny said. With his burned arms, he motioned us away from the stern, and we fought our way through the mass of bodies to the port side and back toward the middle of the ship. It was less crowded there, but closer to the fire and smoke, so we huddled down low. Patrick, Benny said, listen to me. I ain't never lied to you, have I? Not since the day I first met you at Sister Mary Teresa's orphanage and you ticked me off, yakking away about how that big bum Hank Greenberg was a better first baseman than the old Iron Horse himself, Lou Gehrig, which even a rockhead knows ain't true. No, Benny, I said. I was so frightened my breath was coming in ragged gasps. You've never lied to me. Well, I ain't lying to you now. I gotta believe the distress call went out. I know I crack on the Swabbies a lot, but the Indianapolis is a darn good ship, one of the best in the whole fleet. And Captain McVeigh has everybody trained to do their job. I gotta believe they knew what to do when that stinking sub hit us. And the first thing to do would be to send out a call for help. I'm thinking there's ships and planes on the way. But I'll tell you true, it don't look good. I don't think this ship is going to make it. We got to go over the side. We need to abandon ship. There's guys down there right now in life rafts, and they'll pick us up. You'll see. But we got to get off the Indianapolis before she takes us down with her. You understand me? Teddy was clutching my arm again, making his ever-present noise. Teddy understood everything he heard. He knew what was happening all the time. He just never talked. Now he was afraid and clawing at me so much I couldn't think straight. Quiet down, Teddy, I said in the calmest voice I could muster. I needed to focus, but there was no time. I could feel the ship shaking and vibrating beneath my feet. It felt like it was going to break apart at any minute. I knew Benny was right. I looked out across the dark, tossing waves. It was so hard to see. The sky was overcast, almost pitch black, and too dark to see anyone floating in the water. Only the fire on board gave any light at all. But I knew Benny was right. We didn't have a choice. If we stayed on board, we'd die. All right, Benny, I said. I'm ready when you are. And that is chapter 4, and we'll be back tomorrow with the next chapter. Thanks, everyone.